Okay, hi everyone. So this is kind of like my first video and delve into like this realm of things. So please be forgiving with me. I really have no idea what I'm doing, so I'm just putting myself out there and testing this out. So you might know me from Instagram, if you are coming from there. Otherwise, you probably don't know me or haven't, seen my stuff yet. Hopefully you guys are fine with the setup for now. I'm just in my car. I literally spur of the moment kind of doing this. I'm, like I said, just kind of dipping my toes into the water here, trying to see, what like my videos would be about, I guess. I know that, a lot of people were asking me questions about myself on Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that, or Snapchat or wherever. And instead of answering those questions individually or by like individual message or anything like that, I kind of wanted to address a lot of the topics in one go, or a lot of the questions that people have for me, I guess. Anyway, about my life, I know a lot of people have been wondering like how my life has been and what life has been like for me as a trans person or biracial trans person living in Amish country. I literally wrote notes because like I'm a loser. I did make this video so many other times, but I just didn't feel like it was concise enough and like it was good enough. Like there was issues with it, just everything. So I guess I want to kind of start on saying that I just kind of wanted this video to be kind of like an intro, I guess, and also like a get to know me type thing, I guess. And I also just want to put some of myself out there and maybe I can help someone, you know what I mean, that needs support or that needs to hear it from someone else, like what they've been through and fought through and beaten. So yeah, long story short, my childhood was pretty normal. Like it was pretty good. I was generally happy, I would say. The only thing I wasn't happy with is that I was different, obviously. And I didn't understand why, in multiple ways. I didn't understand why my white neighbors were mean to me or why they gave me dirty looks or would whisper to each other when they saw me or things like that. I didn't understand any of that at the time. Obviously, as a kid, you don't understand that kind of stuff right away, usually. And I lived a sheltered life, I would say. Like, I didn't really know what the world was truly like. Like, I really thought that everything was like rainbows and sunshine, And it's not like that. Or not even necessarily rainbows and sunshine, but I thought that there was true justice in the world, Anyway, I always felt different. I was raised by my grandparents, mainly. My mom was just kind of not capable of raising me yet. She was young. My dad was young as well. And obviously, I didn't really understand why my family wasn't like all the other families, you know what I mean? But I was happy with my family unit because my grandma was amazing to me, got me everything I wanted. My grandpa was just as amazing, if not more so. He was just absolutely one of the best men that I've ever met in my life. He was just an amazing person and he was everything to me and my family. I realized from basically birth that I liked boys, and I always remember thinking, I wish that I could be a girl. I wish that I could wear dresses. You know what I mean? I wish that I could do things that the girls were doing. And I didn't really understand why I felt like that. I sort of, as I began to get older, just thought, oh, maybe I'm gay. Maybe that's what all gay people feel like. Maybe that's what all gay men feel like. You know what I mean? Probably not the case. Hopefully, anyway. I hope that most gay men are comfortable in their bodies and happy with being men, That was kind of the start of my gender dysphoria. I would beg for Barbies, and my family was pretty indulgent with these things. They were just kind of on the DL about it. You know what I mean? They didn't want it being kind of spoken about, and it was like when the extended family comes over, like, hide your Barbies and your wigs and stuff like that, It was hard being different and not understanding why, thinking that there was something severely wrong with me and being depressed and scared for my future and how that would look. Because as a kid, I thought that just meant I would be alone forever. You know what I mean? and that was that. But I eventually kind of got into going on the internet, obviously, as most young people do nowadays. And that was kind of my introduction to other kinds of people, I searched for friends, romantic relationships on there, as crazy and insane as it sounds to be like 8 years old and looking for like a boyfriend online. I wanted that affection that I wasn't always getting at home. Because although my grandma did give me a ton of time and attention and devotion, my grandpa was kind of working 24/7. And when he was home, it was very sparse, and it was kind of just at night or whatever, So I just kind of felt lonely sometimes, I feel like. And I feel like I didn't know how to express that or let that be known in the environment that I had at that time. I just kind of experimented, online. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I just think that it kind of opened doors to me mentally that I wasn't ready to have opened as far as romance and relationships go. But these people also helped me realize that I wanted to be a girl and that I could be a girl in a sense, or that I could pass as a girl, that I could live life in the way that I wanted to live it. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, no matter what anyone says, I'm not trying to be a biological woman. I don't want to change my DNA. I don't think I've changed my DNA. But in the society that we have today as intelligent beings, we use gender to identify ourselves and to form an identity. And it's a big part of our society, because of the differences between the two. And so that's just how I want to identify and how I want to live my life. And honestly, anyone that does have a problem with that, I'll never understand why. Because I've just never hated something so bad that that's my goal in life, is to eradicate them or hate on them or change them, or that's just not my agenda. I just want everyone to live happily and peacefully and get along. That's kind of my dream. That's kind of been my dream, So at that point, I asked my grandma for help with looking for doctors that could help me, as I put it, not get a deep voice or not go through puberty, which I didn't explain why to her, but I think maybe she was just either doing her own research or had already known about this kind of lifestyle, or because I just remember her not being that shocked any of these ideas. But also I just think it was probably because it had been a long time coming. I think the reveal of whether I was gay or whatever was wrong with me, I guess. Wrong with me, not really wrong with me, but you get what I'm saying. I was very lucky in that sense. I'm grateful every day for that. I didn't have the best, experience later in life, but I'm grateful for that early start, because I know there's people that have it 50 times worse. When we got to the doctor, which actually was Rachel Levine, I know, crazy. It's insane that the world works this way with connections and, people. Like, she's such a big figure in the trans community now and the world and the US. And it's like I was just, it feels like yesterday that I was just her youngest patient that she was probably dealing with. And, it was great to meet her, obviously, and she changed my life. So I'm grateful to her every day. But during that first appointment, I basically kind of came out right and said that I wanted to be a girl and that I wanted to live that lifestyle, and I think she kind of helped me explain it along to my family as well. And like I kind of touched on earlier, my mom and dad, they were kind of out of the picture for a lot of my life. But my mom kind of stepped back in around this time, I would say, as in she got more involved or more controlling, I guess, to kind of begin to take the role of being the sole parent. Not that I was under her guardianship necessarily, but she began to take me to all of my appointments. She began to get an apartment and things like that for us to move out of my grandparents' house and have a place and stuff like that. And she kind of began just, adulting, basically, finally. Basically, everything with my transition was generally accepted, except the main issue with that was just that they all had an idea of the girl that they wanted me to be. And I didn't want to be that kind of girl or that kind of person. So that was kind of where we clashed a little, but it wasn't anything to where, I felt like it was like impossible for me to transition, or like they were telling me not to, or, the other experiences, the negative experiences that people have with coming out to their families and stuff. So I ended up switching to homeschool during this period before I kind of officially transitioned. I just didn't want to go through the social ridicule. I didn't want to be judged, obviously, and made fun of. So removed myself from that situation. Yeah, so I began to basically be at home with my grandma full time, and I would spend the day, online talking to boys on there and, stuff like that. But even after I had transitioned, I still became kind of periodically depressed. And it kind of has been like that my entire life, like since I was like 6 or 7, really. So I feel like it's just kind of chemical with me, where there's just times where I'm more depressed than others. Things with my mom, I started to stay with her for longer stretches, like days at a time. But things were not good when I was there. And she would, berate me, argue with me, put me down, scream, yell constantly, over every little thing. And my mom had mental health issues. They are diagnosed, rather, but she just refuses to then seek treatment for her issues, rather. Like, for example, she's been diagnosed as being bipolar, but she just didn't believe that she was bipolar. I guess she had went because she felt depressed and thought she had postnatal depression or something, and they told her, you're bipolar. But she was like, no, I'm not bipolar, blah, 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 blah. To everyone around her, though, I think it's very obvious that that's one of her issues. So she just refused to address that or get help or treatment for that. And obviously that ruined a lot of her relationships, I think, in life, including with me, her kid. So she kind of just wanted my grandparents out of the picture at that point because I wanted to be with them. Like, I didn't want to be with her because I had already been with them for so long, and she treated me awfully, So I was begging to go back there constantly with my grandparents. But around this time, I reached out to, men online, reached out to much older people, usually. Around this time, I started to reach out to people that were actually nearby to me. Like, I kind of just looked up people that lived at my nearby high school on Facebook and added them on Facebook. They were actually older than me too. Like, I was only like in middle school at the time. But, when I was younger, I thought that maybe older people would be able to better understand, my issues, or maybe they would not relate necessarily, but be compassionate and not like weirded out, about me being trans, etc. So I reached out to those people. And that was kind of my start at life in my area, as far as like high school and stuff like that, and like friends and connections. That was like where I branched out from and where I kind of know everyone in my area from, like where I started. Like, I met this person from there, and then from there and there and there, you know what I mean? So that was kind of where it started for me. But that kind of led to me experimenting with drugs, alcohol, and bad things, doing bad things that I probably shouldn't have been doing. One of those things being Vicodin. And that was kind of my introduction to opiates, which then became my drug of choice. And like, I will say, like, I just thought that I thought like anyone that was lucky enough to like have a prescription of these or get these or anything like that would be taking them, every day. And I wanted to do that. So I kind of began to seek out other, stronger things and party more, go out more, sneak out more, all of that, coinciding with this kind of experimenting. My grandpa suddenly just died. He got diagnosed with brain cancer. They gave us no like hope, they gave us no hopeful outcome really. But we kind of lost everything after that. Like, our house we lost, and my grandma kind of lost her mind after that, I guess. She just kind of didn't care about anything anymore, and didn't care about like me anymore. And I think that was partially just because she felt like there was nothing more she could do for me at that point, because she relied on my grandpa so much, and so did I. So did everyone in my family. And so that was when my mom kind of took over full time, and things went downhill from there. Straight downhill, went terrible. Abuse from my mom was basically, it became 24/7, full time, constant. Like, like, it was just, it was relentless. And I think she just knew that now I had no one that could protect me or that would save me, that I could run to or tell about, what was happening to me. I quickly became pretty subservient, obviously. When it's relentless and you just want a moment of peace from it, like, you'll just do anything someone says eventually. And I guess that's kind of how torture is. Like, when you beat someone down enough, they'll do anything that you want them to. And I just feel like that was her goal. And she definitely achieved it. With that abuse came verbal insults and things about my body and how I would never be a woman and how, every transphobic thing you can say, of course, etc. But with that came, more issues about my self-image, and, she made it, 10 times worse growing up, going through puberty and HRT while also going through relentless abuse, And growing up when I was younger, when I did live with my grandparents, I would have never thought that my mom was going to do these things to me later in life. I knew that she was more mean and that she wanted. Okay, I turned off the car too, just so that I can not leave it on 24/7. Long story short, it was tough. It was scary having no one that I could call. I remember wanting so bad to be able to call my grandpa to come save me, and knowing that there was no one that I could call that would come and help. But with that, I kind of turned to drugs even more so. Specifically, heroin I tried when I was 15, and I only snorted it at the time. Only. Obviously, doing it at all is wrong, but it got much worse later, obviously. Or things would have just ended there with that, and I wish it did, as in, my history with drugs. Yeah, I turned to that because I just needed some kind of escape from the fear, and I just wanted someone to save me, honestly. That's what I desperately wanted. I just didn't understand what I had done to deserve the treatment that she put me through. And when people ask me, well, you must have done something, or they'll say you must have done something, or what did you do, or why did she do these things to you? And I still don't really know why exactly she went to such extremes to make me miserable. The only things that I can really think of are that she didn't like who I became when I transitioned and wanted to make me suffer for that. Or maybe she was jealous that I was now living my life as a girl, and she wanted the opportunity to do that too, to live out her teen years. But she, had a kid at 18, and so she had to, I guess, get her shit together and stuff like that. Not that she did for, 10 years after she had a kid, but regardless, I feel like she was kind of also, caught up in looking for men as well, and looking for a partner and finding love after my dad as well. And building that home, that picture perfect home in her mind, or whatever she, you know what I mean? I don't even know if that's really what she wanted, but she was a complicated or is a complicated person. You know what I mean? And I still don't understand. I don't understand her or why she did these things to me. All I can say is that I don't feel like anything that I could have done warranted most of the things that she did to me. There was a time when I had told my grandma about something that she had done to me. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was like she hit me. And so I told my grandma, and basically she poured hot, freshly made tea T on my face, I felt like I couldn't really escape, you know what I mean, or find a way out. And that's why I turned to drugs, because at least if I was going to have to put up with the relentless abuse, then, I wanted to do it while I was high. I basically told myself once I could get out of this situation, like once I was 18 or whatever, I would stop drugs entirely and that I would just focus on school and doing better in life, But obviously that doesn't always happen. You know what I mean? Things don't always go exactly as we plan, obviously. And that wasn't exactly what happened. Basically, during all of this, the abuse and everything like that from my mom, there was, I guess, maybe multiple instances where people reported her to CPS, children and youth, after seeing what she had done or hearing her in public and everything. Basically, she drugged me on my knees across a parking lot and like ripped skin off my knees and stuff. And there was someone who like came up and told her that she was going to report her and like got her license plate number and stuff. And then I think there was also another report or something like that that I'm not sure where it came from or anything like that. But that was how they kind of became involved. Coinciding with that, they searched my room, basically, I guess, while I wasn't there, children and youth, and they found drugs. And due to that, they kind of quickly swooped in and swept me up and took me and put me in like a shelter, because I guess they just felt like she wasn't fit to raise me. And also I had issues and just several things. So I became a ward of the state or whatever. She lost custody. They took custody of me. I was in and out of shelters and stuff like that, for kids that were, didn't have homes or parents or whatever the case. And as you guys know, most of these places are not great places to be. Most of my experiences at these places were torture. It was lonely. It was lonely. It was scary. They treated you, like a number because you kind of were, you know what I mean? I was in also mental health facilities that they put me into. And eventually I was forced to do rehab by them. Most of my experiences at these places were torture. It was lonely. It was lonely. It was scary. They treated you, like a number because you kind of were, you know what I mean? I was in also mental health facilities that they put me into. And eventually I was forced to do rehab by them. And this kind of fatefully coincided with me having just met this random guy on Facebook online that lived in Florida. And that just so happened to be where my rehab was going to be, because there was like no rehabs in my state that would take, I guess, a trans kid. I guess there wasn't many rehabs, like drug rehabs, coinciding with eating disorders and stuff like that, because they also wanted me to get treatment for that, and my body image issues and stuff. And so there wasn't many, that would put me with the girls. And I think they also just didn't, the first thing that the rehab people said to me was that, like, wow, I did not expect you to actually look like a girl or something like that, I think they said, which obviously is insanely rude. But I guess that's why they assumed so many other places had been rejecting me or something, or had issues. And it was actually a pretty good experience. I didn't necessarily get help getting clean from that, because I never intended to actually stay clean with the way my life was going at the time. But it was a good experience. And I also met a lot of people who taught me a lot, there. I met this guy that also lived in Florida. And he met me at the airport. And was like, he was like, I'll meet you at the airport before you get picked up by the rehab people. And I met him there, and everything. And then he ended up communicating with my rehab and stuff like that to come and visit me while I was there. And things kind of became more like real and serious between us. And that was the first time I had ever had a guy show genuine long-term interest in me like that in person. So I was kind of swept off my feet, you know? And he ended up moving back from Florida after I finished rehab, to where I lived with me, or not with me, but he got a place here. And then once I got out of rehab, I was already almost 18 at that point anyway. So they allowed me to go and live with him, and, you know, pay or have my own place with him rather. And he wasn't much older than me. He was only like 3 years older than me or something like that. Or yeah, he was like 20. And so it wasn't like weird or anything like that. And it was a good, I think, experience for me. It taught me a lot about what I want in a relationship, and definitely like in a marriage in the future or anything like that. I thought this was like my fresh start. I thought this was my happily ever after. After all that pain, I realized like that it was probably better to not do drugs, because then I wasn't going to be able to be with him, even because I was being drug tested and stuff like that by, you know what I mean? The state at that time, through children and youth, their courts and stuff like that, court mandated, you know what I mean, programs and stuff like that. So not that I was even really able to, but I just, you know, I was just more so interested in beginning to build a home and a life for myself. You know what I mean? Somewhere safe for the first time that I had had in years. But things also quickly went downhill with him. And he kind of became, you know, bad to me as well. He kind of, you know, became someone that I definitely wouldn't want my child to be with, unfortunately. So yeah, it was hard, you know. I loved him so much, but he had his own issues, you know. He started drinking and cheating on me. He would drink like an entire bottle of Nikolai in seconds every morning. I think that was he and I's first real, well, almost adult for me, but for him, well, I guess I did become an adult when I was with him, so that's not necessarily true. I was with him until I was 18 and stuff like that, but it was my first adult relationship, his first adult relationship, or, you know what I mean, mature relationship. So it was a learning experience, but a painful one, because I had no one but him. And that's hard, you know. Obviously, it's even hard when you have family and then you have a boyfriend and you lose him when you dedicate all of your time to him instead of like having friends, or, you know what I mean? But for me, I didn't have family. I didn't have friends. I had no one, because for most of my teen years, I basically was just fighting for, you know what I mean? Like stability in life. Our neighbors called the police on him and he ended up getting arrested because I had 2 black eyes or something like that. And it was pretty obvious that he had done that to me, because the neighbors were calling the cops on him, saying that he was screaming and threatening me and stuff like that, and hurting me or whatever. So after he was arrested with that, he just kind of stepped back and kind of just gave up, I guess, on fixing the relationship, and basically just disappeared from my life. He just, once our lease was up, he just went back down to Florida and stopped talking to me completely, basically. He told me that he was going to get us a new place, get a job and save up money, and then come back and get us a place, or that he was going to move me down there this time to Florida. And I believed that. I thought, well, maybe he's just going to get his act together. I don't know. But obviously that's not what happened. But yeah, I was heartbroken. You know what I mean? So I started shooting up, like for the first time. I just kind of gave up and just kind of gave myself over to drugs. And I had nowhere to go. So I was, I was in and out of hotels, Airbnbs. I would occasionally even go back with my mom, who would just resume the abuse. It was just almost like immediate. Like the second I would like be in her presence, she would find some kind of issue and I mean things as little as like bringing dirt in the house with my shoes would set her off into a physical altercation. You know what I mean? So it was just relentless, like with her. Like there was no escaping or being perfect enough to avoid any of that. I began to use, daily, constantly. I couldn't, go even like 3 hours without withdrawing. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. And I wish that no one had to go through it because it was hell for me. And I believe everyone should have the chance to live abundantly and happily. Everyone. And I just would never wish that situation and that pain on my worst enemy. I was using to the point where I had no more veins left to inject. I would do the palms of my hands. I would inject, which is like crazy. I know even doctors, when they heard that, they would like feel like, how are you even doing that? Which I had nowhere else to go with veins. I did both of my arms, both of my feet, both of my legs, my, everywhere that I could get, I would do. And yeah, so it was bad enough to end up causing me to have heart problems, which is kind of where things got more serious. I could barely stand up at one point. I literally couldn't walk for longer than like 2 minutes without passing out. I would like almost fall downstairs trying to get downstairs because I couldn't like go down them long enough without sitting. I mean, because I couldn't like go down them fast enough without needing to sit. It was bad. I had tons of other, symptoms like sleep apnea issues, which I think were related to it as well. But my QTC was super long. I gained a heart murmur that I'm still, by the way, all of this is still like, I'm still dealing with all of this, obviously, to this day. This is still a part of my life and something that I have to deal with. You know what I mean? And it's an everyday struggle and it's terrifying and scary. But I will say I'm doing much better than I was. And there is at least a happy ending for now to all of this. So I will say that. But anyway, with my doctor's help, I did end up then getting clean because I just realized that I didn't even have long left to live anyway if I didn't stop. And it also just got to the point where I was 95 pounds and I'm 5'7", so I'm not like super short, you know what I mean? But I was like 95 pounds. I was eating like once a week. I you know what I mean? I was dying. I didn't even feel like I had already used to the point where my tolerance was so high that it didn't matter how much I even did. I couldn't hardly even feel it at all. I wouldn't, you know what I mean, nod out or anything like that. I was basically addicted to the ritual of injecting it, you know? So I knew I had to make a change. And I was also ready to make a change. And I know that people keep doing this for their entire lives. So I'm lucky that I got tired of it. I'm lucky that I wanted to be done, because most people don't get that luck. They don't get tired of it. You know what I mean? And that is the best thing that they can, that is the best thing that's, you know what I mean, in their lives. And I understand that. I wholeheartedly, completely understand that. And if you're feeling that way, just know there is better out there. There are things that will make you happier, genuinely happy, for longer than that. For longer than just that minute or few minutes or hour or however long. There are other things that are longer sources of fulfillment. Like, just, you have to find those things and find what that thing is for you. And it's different for everyone, you know what I mean? Obviously. I have no advice that I can give that isn't just my own experience. But what it took for me to stop was just being tired and just wanting something different for myself, and wanting to have my grandpa be proud of me in death. You know what I mean? I just wanted a life. And some things, like on some days, the only thing that gets me through it is that I don't have to put up with relentless abuse anymore. And I don't have to be afraid. But I know that, I'll still be happy again one day, even on those days, you know what I mean, where I'm having more trouble finding, you know what I mean, something to make me happy, or finding that peace, that inner peace inside, you know what I mean, on those days that I'm struggling with that. But I just basically wanted to share my story, because I feel like I know that there's someone else out there that maybe I can help, and that I can convince that there's something worth, you know what I mean, living your life for, and not just giving up on yourself for. But anyway, I eventually stopped, which my personal route of having like beat it and everything, I think it's different for everyone. Like, some people use other substances like Suboxone, Methadone. Some people get Vivitrol, that shot or whatever. But I personally, got on Methadone. That was just the way that I did it. And yes, I am still on that. However, it doesn't get me high. You know what I mean? Like some people say or whatever, just because usually addicts' tolerance is so high already that doing a much weaker opiate isn't going to get them high. It's just going to help them not withdraw and not have that chemical withdrawal as well. Like the chemical, like being depressed, you know what I mean? After stopping these drugs, like I feel like it helps with that aspect of it as well, chemically. Anyway, that was my personal method. And I know people will say like, oh, then you're not clean, whatever. And to that, I will say, I don't even necessarily advocate for you to stop using every single drug that's out there. I advocate for harm reduction. So while stopping drugs entirely is obviously the goal, for example, trading in heroin and injecting heroin for taking methadone once a day so that you don't have to be withdrawing and so that you don't have that depression from the lack of dopamine in your brain, like that is much better. It's just like, obviously, you know what I mean? There's issues with methadone and stuff like that, like the long-term issues and stuff like that. But for people that have been clean for less than 5 years and stuff like that, it can truly, I think, be a lifesaver. So anyway, I don't really want to hear any of the like, oh, you're not clean talk, because yes, I am technically clean. I'm not sitting here in front of you high or anything like that. And listen, everyone has their own path to getting clean. So what worked for me might not work for you. And that's totally fine. You know, this is just my kind of, you know what I mean, how it worked for me and what I did and how I'm going through life, I guess, and my experience, rather than advice on what you should do. Because I always tell people too, like, don't become trans unless you feel like there's no other option. Because being trans is hard. It's torture. It's hell for us. It's hell for us to be trans most of the time. It's not a fetish. It's not, no one wants to be trans, okay? This was just the only option I had to happiness and to freedom and life and the things that I want in the universe. And you know what? At the end of the day, our universe doesn't have any rules. So why wouldn't I live this short experience that I get in the way that my brain is telling me to live it? And I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not pushing this on anyone. Nothing like that. I don't ever tell people you should transition, you should do this. It was my last resort, and it's most other people's last resort as well. So if you're watching this as like a transphobic person, just know we don't want to be trans either. We just chose this because we didn't want to die. And for me, that was the only other option other than transitioning. Anyway, I know this was a long ass video, okay? And I know that I didn't really touch on every single topic super in depth. And that's just because I want to do more videos on kind of each of these topics, maybe in the future. For example, shelters, like, you know, my experience with the foster system and stuff like that. Or not the foster system necessarily, but because I wasn't, like, no one fostered me, but being in the system, you know what I mean? Like, being in a shelter, like a group home and things like that, you know what I mean? My experience with that, you know what I mean? I want to talk more in depth and give stories and stuff like that. But I just kind of wanted to give a rundown first of like who I am and I guess my experience, because that's kind of at the end of the day what I'm sharing. And I guess I'm kind of sharing this experience of mine because I want people to see trans people in a different light as human beings. I want them to see that I'm just kind of like another girl out there that's suffering, and you know what I mean? Everyone is suffering. Everyone is hurting in some way. So just be kind, dude. You know? Anyway, if you feel like, you know, there's other topics that you want me to kind of delve deeper into and answer, I am going to be doing that. I'm also going to be doing like a Q&A. So if there's individual questions you have that are more like specific, drop them and I'll maybe answer them in a later video, or directly I'll answer you. I read tons of comments every day on my Instagram and stuff like that and TikTok, and I reply to a lot of comments. So I love talking to like people that have the same mindset as me and that are also, you know what I mean, just cool people. I love to hear different perspectives, as long as it's not, you know what I mean, a rude and mean and evil perspective. Then yeah, I love to see your guys' perspective and talk to you and everything like that. I know a lot of my videos are silly and like memes and stuff like that. This is kind of more serious. I know, more serious toned, but hopefully that's okay. And hopefully you guys like this, or whoever's watching this, because I don't know. I just wanted to kind of dip my toes in the water. And yeah. So I'm sorry that, this was kind of a ramble. I did my best. This is my first video. Be kind. And subscribe, obviously, or follow my socials, please, if you're down to support me. It would mean a lot because, I'm trying to get through the world and through this life in the same way that you are, and hopefully you can relate to me in one way or the other. And also hopefully you find me funny, because a lot of my videos are really funny. So yeah. Not this one, but I am going to go inside and eat and decompress after this video, because it was tough to lay all of this out there and be raw and genuine and open. So yeah, please be kind. Please be kind. And the world will hopefully be kind back to you. Just kidding. It really won't be, but I will be kind back to you. I will be kind back to you. So that's a positive if you're kind to me. So yes, thank you. All right. Bye. And I hope that you like this. Peace out.